Hello, so I'm here with Jim. Jim, who are you?
I'm Jim. I'm your friend of many years. I was
Yeah,
your camp counselor,
that's right.
uh, your confidant, your party partner,
Yeah.
and you know,
I would say in
you're.
many ways a role model.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Um, but that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, uh, you know, we're both in school, except for it's kind of different.
Yeah.
But you took it too literally when I said stay in school. Like you
Yeah.
just you stayed there forever.
Yeah, so I have three masters and I'm doing a PhD for those who don't know.
Mm,
Um, yeah, it's going fine. I got a big test in August that I'm prepping for. It covers five courses. So I'll be spending the summer doing that. Um, I'll be going to Europe for a couple weeks in there probably. Still have to figure that out, but I'll be like remotely preparing.
mhm.
Um, and
You go to
you,
Germany or
yeah, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, all the German speaking countries,
right?
which is my natural comfort zone.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. There's Germans and chocolate. It's all good. It's good there.
Yeah,
Germans, chocolates, and beer.
exactly.
Yeah. Sounds
And you're
fantastic.
you're you teach school.
Yes, I'm a teacher. I am a middle school teacher in Brooklyn, New York, at a Title One school.
What does
Title
Title
One
One
school.
mean?
I was just gonna say, Title One is it means that 60% or more of the students that go to the school live at or below. I don't know what you would call it, the poverty level. I don't know
Yeah,
what
yeah.
the PC term is for low income or whatever. Um, yeah, so I teach at one of those schools, and I'm a special education teacher. I teach 12 to 1-to-1 classes, which means there's me, a paraprofessional, and 12 kids.
Okay.
And they span from speech and language impairments to emotional disturbance to um, other health impairments, which
Yeah.
is, just some sort of blanket term they use. Uh, yeah, and I teach science to those kids because we have a very large special ed population. So we have like a specific social studies teacher just for those classes, science, ELA, math, and I teach them science.
Cool. Do you
Yeah, it's fun.
find do you find that special ed sort of correlates with low income? Like, is there like a comorbidity, or is it you you come across as many special ed in Title One as you would in any other school?
That's a good question. I don't have that much experience. I mean, I know I have friends that teach in Long Island and they have special ed students too. And I think it's a good question. So in where I work, here's what I noticed. So with lower income families, it's typically kids who are on lower reading levels, and
Yeah.
a lot of the times it's kids who the school sort of tells the parent they need these services. The school be, and sometimes even it used to be where they have to force their hand almost because teachers, I mean, parents, there was like a stigma attached to your kid being in special education classes. Luckily,
Yeah.
that's been lifting, but nowadays all the more higher income parents who are, and typically they're have higher literacy levels. They usually are on a higher reading level. Um, a lot of the times, and they do their research and they'll like fight to get their kids services that they might not even need,
Yeah.
but they know that the system will pay for those services. So if they just think their child's even a little behind, they'll get the state or city to or the town to pay for, extra help and extra time on state tests because they know when they take the regents tests, which
Yeah.
in New York you need those to like get a regents diploma out of high school or SAT or any of those tests. They can get extended time on those tests.
Yeah.
They can get breaks. So parents will kind of force that. With our kids, it's like we sort of had to force it or like really explain to the parent like they really need this. Where the and yeah, yeah, and I think that's just a matter of like access to information and stuff like that.
Yeah. And so how did you first get involved with that?
Special education.
Yeah.
It was it it wasn't by choice, but I'm glad I chose it.
Yeah.
I was a New York City teaching fellow, which is a program that still exists in New York City. It's about 17 years ago. That's a program where the city of New York basically pays for most of a master's degree for you, a subsidized master's degree. I got into that program about 17 years ago and went back to school. I was working a corporate job. I had no education background at all. That's what the program is. It's called like it's called alternate route in New Jersey, I think.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I did that program, and then when you join it, there's high needs areas. So it's usually math,
Yeah.
science, special education. And I was like, well, I wasn't very good at math and I wasn't very good at science. And so I guess this is what's left. And I don't speak a foreign language, so I couldn't help, students, ENL students, who English is not their first language. I didn't think I could make as much of an impact there. So special education just seemed like,
Natural.
yeah, well, I don't even know if it was natural. It was kind of what was left. And
Yeah.
if you remember when I didn't even know what that meant. So when I Googled it and it talked about kids with emotional disturbances, I remembered that when I was a camp counselor with you, there was another program through DIFUS, Division
Yeah,
of Youth
that's
and
right.
Family Services, right? And they would sponsor inner city kids that usually from urban areas. Usually, it could be from rural areas too, but kids that were at risk youth, and they would allow them to go to our camp, which was not the cheapest place. And
Yeah.
they could go for free, and they used to put me and our mutual friend Jay usually in charge of those kids. We
Yeah.
just seemed to connect with them somehow. And when I started reading the description of special education, emotionally disturbed, I was like, oh, that sounds like camp. So
Yeah.
really, ultimately, the camp that you and I met at that was really the inspiration behind becoming a teacher, because it was like, oh, it just sounds like it's going to be camp without the campfires.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like a lot of people who went to camp ended up doing stuff in education or
Mental
like
health.
mental health. Like Nicole's a social worker, Steph's a teacher.
Hmm.
Sean is an
And Steph's a great
outlier.
teacher. He's a
Yeah,
what? Yeah.
Sean's an
Yeah.
outlier. Sean went military, and then I like to joke like in the nation, or the nation was the group of kids who were the higher male group.
Yeah.
Um
Right.
and so I like to say that Sean really loved the nation, I really love the nation, but what Sean got out of it was like sleeping in barrack style accommodations and firing
Hmm.
guns.
Yeah.
And I got like the international, like wanting to hang out with the international counselors.
Sure. Yeah, but it's Sean, even military, I mean, that's still a place of service. A
Yeah,
lot
that's
of
right.
the people are doing some matter of service. I mean, even you have a focus on the environment. I mean, you'll eventually, I'm sure, I know you have, and then you'll eventually probably work in some way of serving
Yeah.
humanity as a whole. And I think, most of us ended up doing that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Do you
for
think
sure.
they indoctrinated us?
Well, we went to a YMCA camp, and even though they would say it was sort of, a religious, that's the word, but not very religious place,
Yeah.
even though it was it's young, Christian, or so is the C in YMCA is Christian.
Yeah.
Um, I think they still try to instill like sort of like those values of service,
Yeah.
almost like almost like a Jesuit sort of like philosophy of like service. And the I am third thing, if you remember that,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
used to have a little award at camp, the little pendant you would earn, that if you did something that was selfless and you put other people ahead of you, you would earn it. And that was kind of it was probably one of the most coveted awards
Yeah.
you could win at the camp. And we were sort of, yeah. So I think I guess the word indoctrinate, I feel like sometimes has a negative connotation to it, but I agree. We were
Yeah.
definitely indoctrinated to like.
Well, we were socialized.
Right, and we were rewarded. We saw the rewards were based off of doing good. That's what
Yeah.
the rewards weren't based off of success. They weren't based off of profit.
Yeah.
They were just they were you did good, you won an award. Like that's by being good,
Yeah.
being of service.
Yeah. Camp was interesting because it had the international counselors, It had all the local people who had been to camp for a long time, and then, as you said, it had the Dyfus kids.
Mhm.
So it was a sort of strange little melting pot.
Oh yeah, and it had the rich kids. I mean, let's be
Yeah, it
real. I
had
mean,
the rich
it was
kids from Ridgewood.
right. It was an expensive camp, and for me, I was
Can you make me pasta?
my son wants pasta, so I'm gonna make pasta while we're talking.
Yeah, sure.
Soup,
Yes.
like chicken soup.
Not chicken. Ramen noodles.
Okay, he wants ramen noodle soup. He hasn't requested that in a while.
How old
Um,
is Bubba?
Bubba, it just turned 7
Oh,
on
nice.
May
What
30th.
year is he going into?
He'll be a
Second?
second grader
Yeah.
next year.
Yeah.
And no, next year. I mean, well, yeah, next school year. Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what he's doing.
Nice. I see you're wearing a Pride shirt.
A friend of mine got this for me as a joke, but it is also Pride Month.
Yeah.
And at my school, we celebrate Pride Month, so
Yeah.
I just wet my stove so much that it won't light. All
Mm.
those years at camp, and I can't make a fire on my stove. There we go.
Steph, I feel bad for Steph down in Florida because she was running into a lot of the like anti-pride stuff.
I feel bad for her in general whenever somebody says I'm a teacher and then says I'm moving to Florida. You know what I mean? That's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? That's like saying, "Oh, I love freedom. I'm moving to North Korea." It just doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
was such a weird move for her. I mean, in terms of like what she is, like she's just the opposite of
Yeah.
the vibe. But there's a lot of good people in Florida,
Yeah.
and it's 50-50. It's not everybody
Yeah.
thinks it's just a bunch of backward yokels, but it's not. There's our friend Jay, my best
Yeah, Jay's
friend
down there.
Jay is down there. My wife's family lives down there. They're smart and intelligent. I work with one of my ex principals who retired, vice principals. He goes to the Keys quite a bit. He spends a lot of time in Florida.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good people down there.
I have a half sister down there.
Yeah. So it's every place has its weirdos. It's just Florida's got it's such a dynamic mix of people. I think that's why it just seems so crazy
Yeah.
down there. It's just a wild mix.
Yeah.
Plus you throw heat into anything,
Yeah.
it makes everybody crazy.
Yeah, I remember there was like I took one of my undergrad majors was psychology. I took a social psych class, and at one point the teacher went over the elements that can result in like a riot.
Mm.
And it was like close proximity. Another one was a stark discrepancy between rich and poor.
Sure.
And then one of the last ones was heat, like summer.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you don't hear about the Swedish riots. You don't hear about the we never learn about the Norwegian the
Uprising.
Norwegian uprising. Exactly. The Battle of the Alps or whatever. You never really hear about that. So yeah,
Yeah.
it makes you crazy. I mean, I've been stuck in the summer in New York City when it's hot and everybody gets crazy, and especially if you're, like you said, if you're in a city,
Yeah.
it's hot and you're all near each other, everybody just kind of goes nuts. It's
Yeah.
not it doesn't seem natural.
How do you find Brooklyn compared to New Jersey?
The longer I'm here, the more alike it is.
Oh yeah.
To be honest, yeah, it's just you don't think about it, but like I've lived now in the same. I've lived here for 20 years, and I've lived in the same neighborhood for 18 of those 20. There was a 2-year period where I was living in Queens.
Yeah.
And it's all the same. It's like there's the pizzerias, like my hometown in Jersey. There's the locals you just get to know.
Yeah.
It's obviously a little closer. It's not houses, it's apartment buildings, but
Yeah.
it's very much, I don't know. I like it a lot. I'm
Cool.
not going to retire here, but I'm happy to be here for now.
Yeah, I mean, Brooklyn is where all the cool kids are.
Well, it is, but not necessarily my neighborhood anymore.
Oh, yeah?
Because Williamsburg, it started, you know, that was like the new village in
Yeah.
like the early thousands, like right after 9/11 or even late 90s. And then everybody got priced out. And then that price out moved towards where I am now. I'm sort of on the new edge of the pricing out. And then beyond me is like Bushwick. Bushwick is the new, um,
Cool.
cool kids place. So yeah,
Yeah.
Brooklyn's still cool, but the neighborhoods are shifting.
Yeah.
Like now we're like the yuppie
Yeah.
neighborhood over here in Williamsburg and Greenpoint, but over there in Bushwick is like you still got, it's easier to it's more affordable
Yeah.
to live there, you know.
I blame shitty sitcoms for gentrifying New York.
I'm
Like
sure there's no questions part of it.
yeah, like Friends. As much as I enjoyed Seinfeld at the time, looking back at Seinfeld now, like, and then like more recently, Girls.
Oh yeah. Oh God, I hate that show. I'm sorry. Sorry if anybody's who listens to this is a fan. I just yeah, okay, I shouldn't say I hate that show.
What do you
It's
hate
more
about it?
like, so here's the thing. If Lena Dunham's the writer of the show, if her job was to make the worst human beings on the planet, like the characters who just have just the qualities that I find least attractive in human beings, she
Yeah,
was incredibly good at it. So it was like I love to hate it. I watched every episode.
yeah,
It's very rare that I hate something and watch every episode.
yeah,
Um, so I did watch every episode,
yeah,
Also, but I was also like, I remember the first scene with Adam Driver, and I was like, oh, that guy's gonna be famous. Like that guy right away. I was like, that guy
yeah.
is a talented actor. He'll be very famous. So I was watching it, not just for Adam Driver, the rest of them too. But he's the only one that really turned out to be like,
A
a
breakout
superstar.
star.
Yeah,
Yeah,
super, which I kind of I saw it right away. So that was good
yeah,
casting. But these people were just they were just awful. And I think when I speak to people who are closer to that age, they look at me like I'm nuts when I say those people are awful,
yeah,
which frightens me because I'm like, so
yeah,
you think that's what people should be like? And it was just that was actually Girls was the first time I felt my generation,
yeah,
like X.
yeah.
I never thought of it before. And then when I realized I was aging out of
Pop culture.
yeah, and aging out of like the relevant generation, you're right? Well, 'cause
Yeah,
there's an age group where you're like, late teens, early 20s, you're the relevant generation. You're what's creating the culture. And that show is when it like hit me, I was like, oh wait, there's like people who think this is all okay, the way these
yeah,
people are acting.
yeah,
Because even the people on Friends had jobs, for Christ's sake. You know what I mean? Like it
yeah.
was
Sure.
not, yeah. So yeah, it's an important cultural landmark. It's just as a show, I just don't think it started us off and it was like, oh shit, we're here now.
Yeah,
Whereas other people celebrated it. I was like, oh shit, this is where it's at. But now I just sound like an old man.
yeah.
Back in my day, I sound like one of those guys. So I try not to be like that, but I mean,
Are you on
I
TikTok?
I am.
Oh,
I'm
you are.
not active. I'm not an active poster on TikTok. I'll
Yeah,
comment on things and I'll,
yeah.
repost occasionally, but like my name is anonymous. Like my name is a, you know,
Anonymous.
anonymous name. Nobody knows who I am. I have a couple of friends who know I'm even on it.
Yeah,
Um, it's not really, I like it. I like the format of it personally. I mean, I
yeah,
get a lot of entertainment out of it.
yeah,
Um, but it's another, that's funny. So it kind of goes back to the girls thing. I, I love to hate it because
yeah,
there's the people that are on there, who, people that make more money than I do because they, you know, I don't know. They
can can dance around to whatever the newest meme is.
exactly, or like somebody's famous because they have like a cute dog, and that now
Yeah,
that person is a millionaire because they put up pictures of the cute dog, and it's like
yeah,
after a while you're like, what am I like? What am I doing? Like I went to college for 6 years and got all these degrees to do this job, challenging job, and then make you know a quarter of what these people are doing
yeah,
for either ass shaking or dog dressing, and it's
yeah.
like, am I stupid? Maybe I'm like you're in all these colleges with all these degrees. I have these 2 degrees, and then I'm just like, am I just like, but are we stupid now? Like, is this like the new, like we're the new stupid? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you'd think reasonably intelligent people could figure out how to like monetize on those platforms.
And they do. And I think
Yeah.
I
Like,
don't think they're stupid. I think their content is stupid. If that does
yeah,
that make
yeah,
sense?
yeah, yeah,
They're smart enough to know how to use the medium
yeah,
to be successful, but what they're creating is stupid.
yeah.
And they'd probably admit it too. I mean, in most of them, but it's, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Are your students on it?
Oh yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
that's why I'm on it.
Okay.
That's how I got on it in the first place because it's funny enough. So couple years ago, there was like the TikTok challenges,
Okay.
and one of them for a while there was a school one, and every month you would try to record yourself doing this challenge, but the challenges were like spill a drink on a teacher, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
or light a fire in a garbage can in your school bathroom.
Yeah.
So it was like one of those. So I followed it to be like, okay, like let me see what they are so we can kind of be on lookout for those things
Yeah.
as they happen. And then my kids would talk about it. And then when I got on it, I started just looking for like science kids, like kids a little bit older than them doing science postings,
Yeah.
so I could be like, oh, check out this TikTok, or like the astronauts have TikToks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, look at this astronauts TikTok. They're showing how water acts in a weightless environment and whatever.
Yeah.
So it's been a useful tool in like engaging the kids.
That's
So
interesting.
you got to go their way. It's the only way it's
Yeah.
going to work.
Yeah. I feel like teachers have to be at the forefront of a lot of stuff.
Right. And it's, I was talking with this guy, Danny, that I work with, I teach with, and we had a conversation about that, about how like you do age out of teaching, no matter what anybody says. Like when we were growing
Yeah.
up, you remember like you had your like 80-year-old teacher that was still doing it.
Yeah.
But you do age out. You burn out, or you just are like, you get kind of tired of trying to adapt to the new ways the kids learn or the new tools they like to use, and then you kind of become obsolete to an
Yeah.
extent.
Yeah.
And it's just, the older you get, the more of a struggle it is to not be obsolete.
Yeah.
um so
How was teaching in New York during COVID?
oh boy, I mean, it was wild. I mean, well, first, when the lockdown happened, we were all teaching from home,
Yeah.
on Zoom, and that was a huge challenge because we had to. I don't know if you had heard about this, or whoever would listen to this had heard, but New York City, to their credit, managed to get almost every child in New York City a device,
Yeah.
mostly iPads and stuff, which is like a Herculean task, and I'm actually still pretty impressed they were able to pull that off.
Yeah.
And whoever the mayor was, I think it was de Blasio, they should get a lot of credit for that. That was kind of amazing, I have to say, and I don't think it was given enough credit.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have kids who are, I told you we're a Title I school, so you have kids who might have a little struggle getting on internet or having
Yeah.
poor internet. And also the thing I learned about the pandemic, this is like, it was a struggle, but it was a kind of a good to see it. When you're in these kids' homes, I mean, you got kids in a 2-bedroom apartment with 7 siblings, and while you're on with them, they're in their underwear, and there's parents behind them like smoking like weed at the kitchen table.
Yeah.
Like you see the smoke, and like,
Yeah.
um, it really gave me a lot of insight into like, I haven't given homework for many years.
Okay.
I don't give homework, and I'm glad I didn't, because when I was first giving them homework, 15 years ago, I was never getting it back,
Yeah.
and kids were like getting bad grades because of it. And I was like, well, why? I don't know. It just doesn't seem right to fail them because of homework. So I stopped doing it. And now when I got to see into their homes, I was like, holy shit! Like these people, these kids, like how would they get homework done in this environment? Like how is that even possible? So it was challenging in regards to like having them focus, because they'll be sitting there like I'm talking to you, but in the background you see like 5 siblings running around throwing stuff, parents
Yeah.
screaming, um so that was crazy. And then after it was kind of letting up, we went to a hybrid mode.
Yeah.
And that was weird because all the kids were like sitting like, 10 feet apart and they all had masks on. And it was like, I was a science teacher. We couldn't do hands-on experiments unless I could do something that they could all have their own thing. They couldn't share anything.
Yeah.
Um, it was weird, man. It was just weird.
Yeah.
But luckily I think this was citywide. The administrators of the schools sort of let up on people. Like they weren't like, we weren't observed or rated the same way during
Okay.
those times. Like they knew it was sort of like a triage situation, and we just they kind of like let us improvise. You
Yeah.
know what I mean, and try to engage the kids as best we could.
Yeah.
So it was wild, but it was kind of cool to like have to improvise and come up. Like I like that. I know a lot of my other teachers did not like that, but I actually
Yeah.
liked having to kind of be forced into it. Reminded me
Yeah.
of camp,
Yeah. Yeah.
reminded me of being stuck out in the woods and be like, oh, we forgot a tent, so we got to figure out rather way to rig
Harp.
a shelter or something like that, right, or a
Yeah.
tarp, and it was like that, but in a classroom.
Yeah. That's interesting. I don't know how other countries did it. I'm more familiar with how the U.S. education system went about things. I'd be curious to
Um,
know how like China did it.
so
How,
China, I could talk a little bit about how China did it. Their kids went to school.
yeah.
Um, so when the whole pandemic happened in New York City, the health czar of New York City at the time had a plan and gave it to De Blasio of how to have the schools open right away.
Okay.
Blasio turned that down and went with the shutting everything down. I don't know who was right, who was wrong. China did that very thing. They had a plan to have the schools open. The kids would come in, every single one of them would go through a temperature process,
Yeah.
mask, distance, and they did it. Like China just straight up did it.
Yeah.
They were at school. They had masks, they had distance.
Yeah.
That was that. I don't know how they did it in other countries, but
Yeah.
other countries also like in Europe, in Northern Europe, I'm guessing they probably have better access to internet.
Yeah.
It's more available to everybody. So I mean and everybody probably has devices. It's probably a little bit easier.
Yeah. I'd be curious about Japan. I taught in Japan for 2 years, like right out of undergrad.
Mhm.
The one little bit of information I know about Japan in the pandemic is they initially, and I said this on the last podcast actually also, but it's just an interesting fact. They initially refused the vaccine results because they wanted them done solely on Japanese participants.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean,
Um
I guess there's probably some scientific, maybe
mm,
genetic thoughts behind that. I don't know. Maybe. I mean,
I think it's more just like systemic racism.
okay. That doesn't surprise me. I've
Yeah.
heard that a lot about actually whenever I see things about racism worldwide, a lot of the time it's the Asian countries
Yeah.
and especially from everybody, including each other. They all hate each
Yeah,
other.
yeah. Yeah.
And if you're not Asian, it's bad too.
Yeah.
I mean, even Japan and Korea, they still have like racist commercials
Oh, sure.
like out now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not, yeah, I'm not surprised that you said that, to be
Yeah.
honest.
There's I believe if I'm not mistaken, there's this thing like you could be third or fourth generation Korean descent. And you could be completely assimilated to Japan, born and raised there, look identical, have a Japanese name, but in your passport there will be a little note that you're of Korean ancestry.
Jesus, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the other COVID thing I know about Japan, because I have a good friend who's just like me, a dual US German citizen.
Mhm.
He settled in Japan and married a Japanese woman and has biracial kids. And
Mhm.
during the COVID, Japanese nationals were allowed to leave and re-enter the country, but he could
Mhm.
not because he was not a Japanese national. If he
Wow.
left the country, he would have to stay outside of the country.
Wow, it's so wild. It's
Yeah.
so crazy.
There
I mean, I
are
don't.
hot springs are very popular in Japan, like either
Mhm,
natural or indoors.
mhm,
And there are places in Japan that do not accept foreign customers.
mhm.
It looks so yummy.
It's so weird. I mean, I can't believe that still exists, but we're not it, you know.
Yeah.
We sadly we're still in probably the top 10. And I'm guessing like least racist countries, which is sad.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
this is what top 10 or top 5 looks like.
Yeah, it's true.
You know. But
Do
you and
you
I
come
are also
Go
weird
ahead.
like that. Well, but just because we grew up, you and I grew up in probably you and I grew up in the most diverse area of the entire world.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Even if your town was predominantly white when you were growing up or whatever, I mean, Queens, New York is literally the most genetically diverse section of the planet. Brooklyn is second.
Yeah.
Um, oh, I mean, it's we're kind of we do live in a bubble. I mean, even though we you have international travel and stuff.
Yeah.
Bubba, Bubba. Just in terms of like I don't mean a bubble, but I mean like we are our 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 base comes from diversity. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Even if we grew up in a racist household, it doesn't matter. You still grew
Yeah.
up and saw all these different groups.
Yeah.
So those countries, it's homogeneous
Yeah.
populations.
Do you come across right-wing media on TikTok? I don't. I used to use TikTok. I stopped using it when I found out about how much information they gather on you from not just your
Mhm.
use of the application, but all the things the application pulls data from on your cell phone. But
Right.
I do use Google Shorts, which is like Google's version of TikTok.
Oh, never
And
even heard of that.
yeah, if you download on your phone the YouTube app, um the YouTube has like a shorts thing, and it's just a
Oh, I've
lot.
seen those.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, oh, I do know what those are actually. I didn't know that it was, I thought that was just like sort of sourcing from TikTok. I didn't know that it was like its own thing.
It's its own thing. A lot of
Huh,
TikTok people just repost their content from TikTok on it.
I got you.
Um,
Um,
but I come across like sometimes just out of nowhere, I'll get like Ben Shapiro talking about like
mhm.
trans people or
Right. Yeah, I get
like
that. I get that a lot too. I get him. I mean, Joe Rogan, we don't have to
Joe
get
Rogan,
into all
yeah.
that, but I
Jordan
don't really.
Peterson.
Jordan, oh, yeah, okay. So I get a lot of Robert Shapiro, Ben, not OJ's lawyer, Ben Shapiro, um, Jordan Peterson. I get for some reason, I've been getting a lot of Andrew Tate.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but I think part of that is that I have made the mistake of interacting with some of those because some of
yeah,
them are just so obscenely ridiculous. And then I'm like, whatever, I'm just passing by. I'm like, let me throw in this comment. And then now I threw in the comment, and now like once a day at least there's like an Andrew Tate thing. And I'm like, I have to stop interacting. I don't know about this. I have a strong feeling that the longer you stay on something, the algorithm grabs that
yeah. I
you're
think so.
interested. Because there's been conservative things where I'm like, let me hear this guy's point. Like when I hear Ben Shapiro talk, like I'll hear his point. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Jordan Peterson has said a couple of things that I've been like, okay, I don't agree with
yeah,
you, but like that's an interesting take. And Joe Rogan, I mean, the guy has like, I'm not gonna not like. I want to say a quick thing about Joe Rogan. So everybody does like it's like a cancel culture thing on Joe Rogan. You can't listen to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan at one point had Bernie Sanders on for like 3 hours,
yeah,
nonstop, unbroken. No, he couldn't not answer a question. It wasn't edited. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like if you're telling me you're not going to listen to, I don't give a shit if Hitler is interviewing Bernie Sanders for
yeah,
3 hours. Like how many times do you get to hear a possible presidential candidate
yeah,
talk for 3 straight hours and be able to be asked whatever the host wants to ask them? You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Like for you to, or when Neil deGrasse Tyson is on,
yeah,
or
yeah,
when the what do you call it, the other Steven Pinker, like all like those
yeah,
physicist guys, Like you're telling me you're not gonna listen to them for 2.5 hours just because Joe Rogan's interviewing them? I
Yeah.
think that's stupid. So like, yeah, I don't care when he talks to, you know, friggin' those bullshit health gurus and like his
Yeah.
MMA guys, but like you're not gonna listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson for 2 hours? Like really? Just because it's Joe Rogan?
Yeah.
It's just I don't get that. I just don't get that.
Well, that's just contemporary cancel culture.
It
And
is.
I have my own issues with that.
Sure. Well, you have to because you're not a millennial.
Yeah.
So it's, there's just something fundamentally wrong with not letting a group of people who are so into prison reform not allowing someone to recover from a mistake
Yeah.
is just so much hypocrisy that it's like how do you even
Yeah,
what
that's
do
a
you
really
even
good point.
say,
I
you
hadn't I
know?
hadn't connected the prison reform. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
think about it all the time because that's one of their big things,
yeah.
or the even in the environment. I mean, we made a lot of mistakes. You're not going to let like, so what? You're never going to buy a Ford again because they had all these polluting F-350s for all these years, but now they're
Yeah.
making electric cars. You're going to say, well, screw you, it's too late, guys.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's like people make mistakes, we learn new things, we fix them, and then to just be like, oh yeah, but this guy said like the FAG word in passing to some friends and somebody recorded it and now that guy's finished or that
Yeah.
girl's finished, like
Yeah.
finished. They're
Yeah.
done. Their whole career, whatever they were doing is over.
Yeah.
It's like, come really, guys? And then
Yeah.
what about the guy that sold the nickel bag in 1996 that's still in prison?
Yeah.
Like, so which is it? It just doesn't, I don't know.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense to me, but that's me.
No, I think that's a enlightened way of looking at things. I wish more people looked at things like that. You do think it's a generational thing?
Yeah, I mean, isn't everything?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and even if a member of a different generation goes along with it, it still was that the idea was invented by a generation. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like the
Yeah. Yeah.
millennial, let's say, I don't keep saying those millennials, but let's say millennials invented cancel culture. Obviously, there's gonna be people from other groups that jump on that.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Like, because then I never liked that guy or girl to begin with, and we can finish them
Yeah.
forever now, and it's just okay. Like, okay, and then it happens to them, and they're like, oh shit, maybe I don't like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Fair enough.
yeah.
Well, we have a little over a minute left. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I'm not even sure what to think about. I'll just say that I have about it's Friday, June 20, was it
Third,
second,
23rd.
third, and I have 2 more days of school, Monday and Tuesday, and then
Oh,
I'm
you
off for the
do?
summer. That's it. Yep, Monday and Tuesday. Tuesday's the last day of school, and then I'm off for the summer. My first summer in many years not working
Okay.
during the summer at all. I'm going to be just taking it easy and relaxing and reading and hanging out with my son.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm pretty psyched about that, and
Nice.
that's it.
And you're gonna canoe the Delaware?
I'll be canoeing the Delaware with a gentleman by the name of Chris, who you
Yeah.
and I also went to camp with.
Yeah.
Maybe some other people. I'm trying to get Jay to come down.
Nice.
If you're free, we can talk about that. If you'd like to join the trip, it's just every year we go down the Delaware River. We canoe for 3 days and 2 nights, and it's easy and chill and
Yeah.
fun, and you see a lot of bald eagles and
Yeah.
great blue herons and like cool nature stuff, and it's
Cool.
really nice. So I'll be doing that.
Nice. Well, good. I hope you have a good summer. I
Thanks,
think
dude.
this is about to end. So
Great.
thanks for the talk.
Always a